Here is a question from JEST 2023 from Matrices topic. We have to find the independent real parameters, the number of independent real parameters required to describe an arbitrary n cross n Hermitian matrix. Let's go step by step. First of all, in an n cross n matrix, how many elements are there? N square elements are there. N square elements. Out of which n elements are diagonal, n diagonal elements are there. And remaining n square minus n elements are off diagonal elements. So this is the first point. In an n cross n matrix, there are n square elements, out of which n are diagonal elements and n square minus n are off diagonal elements. The second point is, to represent a real number, you need one real parameter. To represent a complex number, you need two real parameters, because complex numbers are defined in the form a plus ib, or you can say x plus iy. One real parameter is needed to represent the real part, and the second real parameter is needed to represent the imaginary part. So total we need two real parameters to represent a complex number. So this is the second point. Now the third point, the definition of Hermitian matrix. ijth element of Hermitian matrix is equal to AJI star, that is jth element's complex conjugate. Therefore, if I is equal to j, AII is equal to AII star, which means both the number and its complex conjugate are equal. Now this can happen only if A is real, AII is real, which means diagonal elements of a Hermitian matrix are real. Diagonal elements of Hermitian matrix are real. This implies, to represent one real number, you need one real parameter. If there are n diagonal elements, you need n real parameters. So n real parameters are needed for representing diagonal elements. Or you can use describing diagonal elements are needed for representing diagonal elements. Now let us think about the off diagonal elements. In the case of a Hermitian matrix, so you have diagonal elements like this, a1, a2, a3, etc. These are real, etc. up to an. Now off diagonal elements, if this is x plus iy, if a12 is x plus iy, then a21 will be x minus iy. So they are not independent. ijth element and jth element are not independent. Now in an n cross n matrix, there are n square minus n of diagonal elements. Now half of them are not independent, half of them depends on the other half, which means if x plus iy is here, then this will be x minus iy. If here it is a minus ib, then here it will be a plus ib. So only half of them is independent. Now to represent each of the complex numbers, off diagonal elements can be complex numbers. So to represent each of the complex number, you need two real parameters, which means you need n square minus n real parameters to represent off diagonal elements. N square minus n real parameters are needed for representing off diagonal elements. N real parameters are needed for representing diagonal elements. So in total we have n square minus n for representing off diagonal elements and n real parameters for representing diagonal elements. Total is n square. So n square real parameters are required to describe an arbitrary n cross n Hermitian matrix.